Assalamualaikum Dr. Zainal. Kalau ada lagi bagi tahu, kita boleh start the event. Boleh. Tak dengar suara Doktor.
Okay, all right. I'm ready. Hi Damia, I'm ready now.
Burhan, please start.
Yeah, now we can start.
Yes, sure, please.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Respected Associate Professor Dr. Zainal Abidin Sanusi, Director, Sejahtera Center for Sustainability and Humanity. Professor Dr. Berghout Abdelaziz, Professor Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences. Former Deputy Director, Internationalization and Global Network, IIUM. Associate Professor Dr. Abdurezak, Abdulahi, Hashi, Kulliyyah of Science, Kuantan. Respected CPS Dean, Sister Damia, CPS staff, PGSS President and PGSS members, all participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good afternoon. I am Muhammad Burhanuddin, Secretary PGSS. I will be a moderator for today's forum. Brothers and sisters, it is our great pleasure to start today's forum on the applications of Maqasid Shari'ah in achieving sustainable development goals. Maqasid Shari'ah and SDGS is an interesting topic nowadays and very important for students and researchers in various fields. Sejahtera Center for Sustainability and Humanity is continuing to lead the effort in making IIUM a sustainable campus. However, before we going to forum, may we recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay, moving forward. Now I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Zainal Abidin Sanusi, Director, Sejahtera Center for Sustainability and Humanity, for his speech. Please welcome.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Burhan. and everyone, Abdelaziz, Abdurezak, Prof, I guess, which is around, and everyone, yeah, in the sessions. I'm so glad and happy, alhamdulillah, shukr. I think this is a very good opportunity, though I personally think that Prof should come first, so that I'll be more comfortable. But let me somehow share my thoughts on this, more of the perspective from SDG, and then slowly, if I can get into it, my humble take on how would it be compatible, how would it be somehow synergized to the Maqasid Shari'ah. Yeah, Burhan, how long do I have? 20 minutes?
30 minutes.
Okay, all right. Let me share somehow the slide that I prepared for this one. More of like trying to see a bit of what's happening, why do we need these kind of discussions, which is very, very critical, very important. We should be mainstream. Yeah, I've been talking to Burhan and I think few friends of postgraduate that postgraduate is the most important group of people in the university, even more important than undergraduate, because somehow they're a bit more mature and they are ready to take up a more critical role in addressing the agenda of the university. So I somehow wittily put up the topic is Maqasid Shari'ah's dynamic governance for SD. Try to push and try to be a bit of provocative in pushing for how far can we really push the thinking, the dynamics of dynamics of Maqasid Shari'ah in looking at issues of governance for sustainable development. The slide, I mean, the first slide is also an information slide. That is to tell that the center is somehow working together on the regional center of expertise on education for sustainable development for Greater Gombak, and also carrying that capacity of humanity, sustainability, spirituality. Alhamdulillah, the university has been awarded in the announcements in New York this year that we are the sustainability institution for the year, being an agenda for somehow to push for stronger role of religion and spirituality in sustainable development. Let me recall a bit, yeah, why I'm excited about this forum. And also, like, I really look forward to have these interactive sessions with everyone, especially with Prof Aziz in this platform formally. Yeah. I've known Prof Zul quite some times. Yeah. This is an article that he put in 2015, yeah, when he attended the forum. Then it was Tun Abdullah, yes, if not mistaken, or maybe it's not Tun Abdullah, yeah, it's Najib already, but it was Tun Abdullah who was officiating the forum. If you look at the screen, there are interesting observations from him. Even then, he was not our rector. I guess then he was the chairman or president, I mean, yeah, board of governance, chairman of the board of governance of University of Sciences of Malaysia. He was trying to somehow bringing a new momentum in pushing and in mainstreaming the role of Maqasid Shari'ah. To my level, to my humble understanding, that it's a dynamic thing, is a very moving thing that should be some way considered, to me, is jihadic in a way that it should be bring that kind of spirit as a guideline, as a source of values. Yeah. I was leaning, so what I would like to highlight here is that my concern and my take here is that can we now get to really seriously put up and push to the limit, to the wall, that how we bring in the governance, I mean, the concept of Maqasid Shari'ah into our discourse, into our more contemporary perspective of looking at what is happening, climate change, war, terrorism, and etc., which SDG, through United Nations through SDG, is addressing it now. So my take here, my premise here is that why are we not seeing the dynamics of discourse in putting up Maqasid Shari'ah as a framework, yeah, in addressing sustainable development, to the extent that we've got to wait for a United Nations agenda to bring to our door, and then there will be two approaches to it. One to criticize it, and the other one is to work together. So why can't we from the beginning become the mainstream governance for looking at these kind of issues, yeah? As a student of postgraduate, and also like part of my job for the center is trying to mainstream whatever the agenda that universities is having. Yeah, so I hope these are the familiar words that you've got by now, yeah, as a postgraduate students, that should be somehow reaching a level of like trying to understand what the university is trying to do. This, I mean, our universities, International Islamic UT, ever since come, even before, but International Result is in, we are into a very dynamic role of trying to bring in, trying to live up, trying to revive the spirit of Islamization to actual practice, not just the level of putting it up, Islamization, the knowledge, and etc. But more importantly is that how can we really address the current issues, yeah, in a way that is very practical, in a way that is, to me, in a way that is very, very Maqasidi, if there is such term like it, yeah. So if you see those keywords that's being put up here, these are the keywords that's being talked about among us. If you get into management meeting, parent meeting, these are the words that we've got to memorize, yeah. Falsafah, national philosophy, SDG, and Sejahtera, and value-based, and UNESCO 4 pillars, and definitely through the IIICE, it is something that we try to put up and highlight more in these discussions, yeah. So question is, are we ready for this, yeah? This is more, I mean, this is all Tansuizul slide, yeah, not all of us, many of the Tansuizul slide, because I'm trying to somehow connect his thinking to what we are doing on the ground, yeah. Everyone knows by now Sejahtera, and I think the challenge now is that how compatible this concept of Sejahtera into framework of Maqasid perspective, Maqasid Shari'ah, yeah. All right, okay. Let me start with this. Yeah, I guess by now, even if you are new students in the campus, I think sustainability agenda, issues of sustainability is something that you got. I mean, you hear every day now. Yeah, but my point here is that how does Islam and Muslim scholars explain this? Yeah, sustainability. And we've got a lot of non-Muslim explain. There are. I'm not denying a lot of explanation that come from Islamic perspective and Muslim perspective. But is it as dynamic? Yeah? How can we put them together? Do we see an international platform whereby the Maqasid Shari'ah perspective is being put on the table and accepted by that platforms? Yeah. So this is something that I'm trying to push for, and this is something that for the past 2 years, when we are invited to international meeting, these people are really looking forward for our perspective. What is so Islamic about our approach when we talk about sustainability? How does actually spirituality comes in? Yeah. So when we throw in the word Maqasid Shari'ah, sometimes in those occasions I don't use that word, but I use human necessities. Yeah, the existence, yeah? the important things of purpose of our existence. So instead of using the word Maqasid Shari'ah. So here, I'm leaving you this one answer, just one questions. Yeah, and then I think. If you put it in the context of our university, it's already been there. Yeah, sustainable development, 1995. Prof. Kamal has put it down as a second vision. Yeah, surprisingly, we got to know about it in our as a second mission. Yeah, we didn't find it until early this year, and we get so excited because then we realized that sustainable development is not something that is very strange to the university. It's already part and parcel of the 7 missions of the university. Yeah. So then I'm sure there shouldn't be any contradiction, there shouldn't be any serious conflicts between the spirit of sustainability and the spirit of the missions of the university. Right? And a common definition of sustainable development is as you can see on the slide. Yeah, but the concern here is that where is the periods of 15th centuries, yeah, during the Prophet time, 1,400 years before, yeah, because the definition look at the present and the future. So what is the role and recognitions of this practice, which definitely sustainable before, yeah? So now my question at this stage now, my second question is that if Maqasid has been the mainstream governance framework, what would be the scenarios be? Yeah, now it's getting more popularity, it's getting more tractions, getting more attentions, yeah, especially in the Malaysian community. But imagine how was the scenarios before? What has been the role of Maqasid Shari'ah perspective? You know, with the 5 functions, this 5 need objective. Where are they? Where are they in the discussions? Whether we talk about the international platforms, about the local platforms. Yeah. All right. Okay. So given that scenarios, given that situations, I think the other point that Rectus is always emphasizing is that let's go back to our reality. Our reality is in our university. What are we doing in university? What is the kind of education are we receiving? Is there any change before from 20th century to the 21st century? In 20th century, that's how the factory is, and that's how the classroom is. And even now, you see, it's not so much different. So, and then even in the classroom, so much different as well. All right. So, if we look at this, we know there's serious discussions on sustainable development, but the systems of education are still being run in the same way. And on the side of it, where is the Islamic education comes in? What should Islamic education is? But my concern now is that in parallel to discussions of sustainable development, practically on the ground, what is happening? Do we have Muslim countries showcasing their achievement, trying to really implement the Islamic education and get a good result? People go to Western countries, people go to developed countries. We used to have a very glorious time of our Islamic universities, but where are they now? So this is the point where I'm trying to highlight, because we are the factory, right? So at the university, as UIA, this is what we like try to change. We want to move from a focus on education that is emphasizing on manpower. We will be looking at moving towards humanity, and then minds, and then we are more emphasizing on the heart. And then instead of machine, looking at the systems and whatever problems of machine, then we are talking about high touch, the soft touch. I mean, this is the heart and the soul, right? And this is the kind of directions that we are moving into, right? Okay. So here, this is what education for sustainable development is. So I hope, Prof. Aziz later on, Dr. Abdurezak can somehow shed some lights on this. Where do we put? Is this thing something the grounds, the same spirit of Islamic education, or is not? So when we move the discourse into the framework of sustainable development, is it okay? Is it right? Is it not Islamic, or is it not following the Maqasid Shari'ah enough? Right? And how can we further strengthen this this agenda of shifting from 3M to 3H? And this to lay down as well, when we talk about where do I come from, bring in a better, a stronger ability. And I'm sure you have seen this, that we are, alhamdulillah, at this other discipline, we are listening to Jasir Rauda, my little understanding from that, looking at the question of why, because they are giving us the objective, and why is that objective? So this, to me, the very first commonalities and synergy between sustainable development and Maqasid Shari'ah is a question of interdisciplinary perspective in looking at things. So the same applies whether in sustainable development issues or putting in the framework or the template of Maqasid Shari'ah into the discussions. All right, so here, when we use the word Sejahtera, is actually a local narrations of how we translate the international agenda of sustainable development. So we believe that our own Malaysian context of Sejahtera is a framework, is a set of values, is a set of guidelines and principles. How can we establish a sustainable lifestyle, a sustainable community and society using our framework? And it's so much been embraced in our society already. It's nothing new. So when you talk about our society, you're talking about the Malay, you're talking about the Malay majority. A lot of it is referring to the practice of Islam and Muslim. So from there, historically, we've been practicing this. We've been practicing sustainability. We've been practicing sustainable development. But somehow, funny enough, very ironic, what are we teaching in the universities is being separated. okay, the values and etc. is not becoming the main concern. The main concern is the technical and cognitive competency instead of the values and etc. And that's where we start going wrong. That's where we start believing like the machines, yeah, and being trained in a factory. KPI is to get a job. Yeah. So quickly, all right. So now, if I can go a bit deeper, right? That is sustainable development goal, and one of the most important questions about sustainability and sustainable development goal is that questions and to look at the issues of inequality. There are three components in sustainable development: economics, environment, and social. You know by now, yeah. But economics that we inherit, economic system that we inherit now, is already designed to be unequal. So when we talk about Islamic finance, when we talk about Islamic economic, this is where we try to bring in a mainstream Islamic perspective. Yeah? Right. So, but again, yeah, I guess my humble understanding is that when we talk about Islamic economics, Islamic finance, it might be the same critics that how Islamic is Islamic finance, how Maqasid Shari'ah is, how Maqasidic is Islamic finance. Yeah. So it is not my discipline. Yeah. But I get into discussion. There's a lot of debate about this. Yeah. People questioning how Islamic. So to me, questioning how Islamic it is a similar questioning how it really fit into the framework of the Maqasid Shari'ah. Yeah? And here, the reason why I love this slide is that it's time for us. It's time for the Muslim to really come back again and really mainstream the perspective of the framework of or the guideline, the values that come from Maqasid Shari'ah, to put it as a reference, as a framework for us to solve any problem. Yeah? We are able to do this before, but there is a period of gap now that we know why that it's not happening. So this is why USM is going. All right, I will go a bit quickly. We've got another 5-10 minutes. Yeah, you know by now these are the building block, and this is a very noble intention of the university is trying to put all these things together. But this is nice to have on paper, but the challenge is in the ground, and we can reflect the challenge when we interact with each other, either among the students or even among the academics. Yeah, one come from another discipline, one come from another discipline. So the transdisciplinary perspective, the interaction is something that we would love to see more, because no one is an expert in sustainability. No one is really an expert on the application of Maqasid in sustainability perspective, or vice versa. That's why we need this kind of discussion. We need the brief, the guts for us to really put it on the table and discuss about it and talk about it. And of course, Quran and Sunnah would always be the reference. But I guess the time whereby we glorify the historical context is somehow can be a bit reconsidered, because at the moment the situation is different. Yeah, when the situation is different, is that we can't use very strongly the context then. Yeah, we need to look at the adaptations, the context that we have now. So what I'm trying to say here is that when Tan Sri Rector put up our missions is to humanize education through Maqasid Shari'ah and sustainable development. To me, this is a very brave, trying to put both. Some people will see it as a bit extreme, those who are not into it yet, but it needs to be done. It needs to be done. But in order for it to be successful, we need a more serious discussion like what we're having now. Yeah, not just to preach, not just to advocate what it is, but what is more important, what is more challenging, what is more needed is that can we juxtapose the kind of argument that we have together and find the solution, and then develop the argument, develop the showcase that Maqasid Shari'ah is the best governance that we have. Yeah. But we have to make it very contemporary. How do we make it contemporary? Is that we got to write on the international agenda that all those people talk about. Yeah? So if we are on our own cocoon talking about that Islamic teaching is A, B, C, D, without interacting, without pushing it to the ability to explain the current phenomena, the current politics, then we are not able to somehow convey the beauty, the dynamics of Maqasid Shari'ah in that context. Yeah. All right. Quickly, this is the 7 missions. Yeah, as I said just now, the sustainable development is something that is already put or already inserted as the second mission of the university. But somehow it was only last 2 years that we really get into it. Yeah. So Alhamdulillah, at least we reached this moment, and now it's for us to really celebrate and move further. Yeah, and if you look at all the other 6 components, it's all very important component of sustainable development. Yeah, so what I'm trying to highlight here is that if under the triple ICE, yeah, this is the component that we've been talking about. And now when we come to sustainable development practice and actions on the ground, it's the same 7 thing that we need to be done. Integrated knowledge in the field of sustainability is transdisciplinary. Yeah, Islamization is where the role of religion in sustainable development. Morality, spiritual values is the ethics. Yeah? And maybe sustainable development group doesn't specifically refer to this, but this is what needs to be grounded there. Yeah? International community is also very sustainable development perspective. SDG 17, yeah, we talk about partnership. Intercultural dialogue, yeah, 16, strong SDG 16, strong institution, peace and justice. Yeah? Deep sense of social responsibility is the part and parcel of sustainable development, that is community engagement. So in short, I'm more like looking at the action part. I'm looking at trying to put on the table that if you put Maqasid Shari'ah, if you put sustainable development together and put it on the ground, we see a lot of commonalities. Yeah, put aside the spiritual and the religion part. There might be some different debate for that one. Yeah? So to me, so I would slowly conclude with my take on what is my understanding of Maqasid Shari'ah, which more or less I've inserted in my argument. Yeah, but this is the slide that we use for our class. Yeah, I saw Suhaimi is there. The UNGS class. This is the kind of like understanding, basic understanding that we give to the students, first year students. That the basic understanding that need to be there so that the student can see how beautiful is the concept, and more importantly, how to relate all the 5 into daily operations. Yeah, we know about this. Yeah, and what I would like to highlight quickly here is that if you look into the detail of it, yeah, issues of basic human rights is there. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, what I will argue towards the end is that what can be further improved if you want to talk about how sustainable development, what is the lacking, what is the missing part in sustainable development goal if you talk about from Islamic perspective, the spirituality. But I'll pick up that one later. Yeah, endogenously, if you look at the component of sustainable development and Islam, it is sustainable. I mean, they are referring to the same concept of being sustainable. Yeah, but the basis might be different. The ultimate goal might be different. But as long as practice is concerned, actions on the ground is concerned, to me, yeah, my humble perspective, that they're all the same. Yeah, just that maybe we are not able before. I mean, there are people who are able to do it. Yeah, but in order to really showcase how Maqasid Shari'ah, how Islam is even more prominent, is more pertinent than SDG. Yeah, this is something that we, as a university, we're trying to showcase out there. Yeah. And quickly, got to go. Yeah. And also what we like to somehow highlight here, just quickly, these are the common usual concept. Yeah, it can be a bit generalization, but when we talk about sustainability and sustainable development, we've got Hablu Minallah, Hablu Minanas, and Hablu Minal Kaun. So these are the same thing, like exactly what sustainable development is. We've got 3 components, and the sustainability is that when you are able to find the balance. Okay, so and mechanisms wise, operational wise, Islam has everything for that. Yeah? Meaning that nothing that we don't have there. We are even better. Yeah, and like I said before, except the God part, the Allah part is the Tawhidic part is something that is missing in sustainable development. But if you want to put it together, yeah, if you look in the concept of economic from Islamic perspective, you've got all the mechanism. From social, we've got all the concepts and keyword there that explain how can we get into that sustainability. The same goes to environment, which is very clear that how it's our role to the environment. Yeah, I will skip this one. So this is quickly just to highlight here that if you want to go deeper, want to really go to conceptual part of it, the academic part of it, it is there. What is not available is that how can we present the case? How can we develop the example that what we talk about, even this is one example that when a man dies, no further rewards recorded for his action with 3 exceptions. So here, if you want to see it from sustainable perspective, yeah, the sedekah jariyah is sustainable consumptions, and then knowledge that you impart during your life, is the sustainable development, I mean, the input that you give, and sun that prays for you. So that is for sustainable future. So we see that if you can have a lot more cases that can somehow showcase the, inshallah, this is how you can see that how beautiful is the concept in actions. Yeah, I think because we had enough, we have got thousands of books explaining about this, but what is missing, what is not there yet, what that we need more is that how the beautiful concept is being put into action, especially in the context of contemporary issues. Yeah, and last one, yeah, last 2-3 slides, I will try to somehow quickly put in a very drastic way that in the sustainable development discourse, we've got 5 P's, and these 5 P's, if you read the article from Prof. Rashid Morton in the book of Spirituality and Sustainability that Prof. Aziz is also there, that we've got interesting relations between the 5 P's of these SDG and the 5 P's of the Maqasid Shari'ah. Yeah, this is how it can, I can share the slide, you can read further detail. But all the 5 P's of the Maqasid, I mean the SDGs can somehow be made parallel, yeah, to the 5 key maqsud objective in Maqasid Shari'ah. Yeah, the life, the intellect, the lineage, the wealth, and faith. Yeah, so meaning that if you want to push for that argument, it is there. Yeah? And of course, there can be a lot of debate on this, but what we try to highlight is that there are possible. And it will be very interesting if this is a kind of discussions that take place in international platforms. Then you can really see the beauty of the Maqasid Shari'ah, the beauty of Islam, inshallah. Yeah. All right, this is another work that someone is doing here, and how they can really put it together. Dr. Zakaria before that was for another universities. So how you put the entities and the ayahs that correlate to it, explain to it, and the 5 P's of the Maqasid Shari'ah, I mean the 5 principal Maqasid Shari'ah, and the 5 P's of SDG. Yeah. So I would leave that. But what I would like to highlight at the end is that when I say just now that what we're missing in terms of when we context together that what is not there in sustainable development goal is that the very foundations of spirituality ultimately, yeah, to bring us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the part that is missing, which we explain better, which our work is better. Yeah, I'm not going into the detail of that. Just to highlight that it is there, yeah, and then spirituality is obviously something that we need to further highlight. And because of that, I think if we look at our own agenda of from the university perspective, we've got 17 goals, yeah, but International Islamic University, IIUM, is trying to push and try to make polemic that we need to have SDG 80, that is spirituality. Okay, Dr. Burhan, I would conclude by saying that to me, to my humble perspective, there's a lot of commonalities. Yeah, there's a lot of same spirit between Maqasid Shari'ah and sustainable development goal that need to be there. Yeah, that is there already. Yeah, when we talk about what are common things among the two. Yeah, but what is missing? One is that I think I strongly believe that we need to work together in showcasing, in translating, in operationalizing all this concept into practice on the ground. It's the time for us now. I think I remember I had a discussion with Prof. Aziz that now is the window, is that golden window for us to really prove that whatever that we claim in terms of Islamization, whatever that we claim there in that we have been being taught, educated on what is there on Maqasid Shari'ah, is for us now to put it into practice and explain better the issues of sustainable development. So with that, I conclude my discussion and I pass back to you. Go ahead. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'll come back again later.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Zainal Abidin Sanusi, for your wonderful presentation. Now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Berghout Abdulaziz, Professor Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, former Deputy Director, Internationalization and Global Network, IIUM. Please welcome.
Open the, okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Okay, brothers and sisters, I think you hear me well here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure what do you expect me to add after you have heard all this great knowledge and great explanation from Dr. Zainal, and this is really wonderful kind of articulation of the issue of Maqasid Shari'ah and also the SDG. So, brothers and sisters, I think I'm not going to add much. As you see that the articulation is really good. But what I'm going to do is just to add some Islamic or Quranic perspective to what you have heard. Recently, I was in one of the events. Somehow there was a communication between the rector and myself. He was discussing about the Quranic view of sustainable development. Quranic view of sustainable, or how Quran articulates the question of development and sustainable development. So as you see, what we have here in front of us, you have already a lot of good wealth of information about how SDG is linked with the model of Maqasid Shari'ah. And I think there is not much for me to add on that one, but I will try to put you or to add some in-depth points which can help us think more and raise more in-depth questions when we talk about development and we talk about Islam or Maqasid Sharia for that matter. Now, the first thing I wanted to highlight here, we need always to differentiate between sustainability and sustainable development, and also the Maqasid Sharia. When we talk about sustainability, generally we will be speaking about the philosophy, about the worldview, about the system of thinking related to development, to sustainable development. So sustainability usually addresses the questions of the main philosophy, the main objectives, the big ideas on this idea of development. When we come to sustainable development, we look at it as an approach, is a process, or is a program, like the program of the United Nations, the SDG. They have 17 sustainable development goals with 169 targets, and they have the indicators. It becomes like a program. So when we talk about sustainability, look like we are putting the theory, the framework, the philosophy, the big thoughts on this, and then we go to a sustainable development, which is one form, or I think I can say it's the recent way or approach to development. There was before many types of development. Even we can talk about civilizational development, we can talk about economic development, we can talk, here we reach a level, humanity reach the level where we can speak about sustainable development, how to do the sustainable development as another approach to development after we reach the worst in terms of corrupting environment, corrupting the world, corrupting the economies through the philosophies of materialism, positivism, all this type. Now humanity is moving towards the international community is moving towards this idea of sustainable development in the last, let's say, 50 years. And now it's intensifying because it becomes a program of all nations, of the United Nations. And that's why sustainable development goals are gaining momentum and they are more practical. So when we come to Maqasid Shari'ah, we are talking about a guiding framework and also a value system. Because Maqasid Shari'ah in its heart, it's actually a value system that's telling you that you are here, you exist here, the world exists here, men exist here to do what? He gives you the big values to protect life. Life is a very big asset, is a very big value. Then to protect intellect, then to protect offspring, then to protect the wealth of people. In fact, in the classical framework of Maqasid Shari'ah, the term wealth can be extended to the non-tangible and the tangible, and can be expanded also, not only talking about the material, the money, the wealth in its, the universe, the nature. Environment also is part and parcel of that protection. That's why we need to relook into our articulation of maqasid. So based on this, I move to one idea just to show you the bigger picture. The bigger picture, where we talk, yeah, there is Maqasid Shari'ah, but bigger than Maqasid Shari'ah, there is Maqasidul Quran, the Maqasid of the Quran itself. Because when we come to Shari'ah, Maqasid Shari'ah is the articulation in the areas of fiqh, of muamalat, of the things related to action and transaction. And when we talk about the Maqasid al-Shari'ah, the Maqasid al-Quran, actually we are opening up a bigger space to understand more the greatness of the Quran and the objectives of the Quran, where Maqasid Shari'ah articulated practically in a human context. That's why our fuqaha, like Al-Ghazali or Al-Shafi'i or Al-Shatibi or Al-Izz ibn Abdul Salam, or all these people, when they start theorizing Maqasid al-Sharia, actually in front of them a real context where Islam is implemented. That's why they were able to institutionalize Maqasid, to theorize Maqasid as a model of thinking in Sharia. So brothers and sisters, looking at the bigger picture of the Quranic model of development, we need to look at these concepts which Dr. Zainal in many slides mentioned, and I think our Richter, even before I think arriving to IIUM here to become the Richter, he was talking about many of these things. And what Brother Zainal quoted in the quotation in 2015, he was talking about the reorientation, the rejuvenation of the Maqasid model to suit the institutional or the development model. So here I'm talking about the main aspects which we need to keep in mind when we talk about development from an Islamic perspective, from a Quranic perspective. The concept like Tawheed, which is the religion of Islam, which is the guide. Then we have istikhlaf, can be seen as the vision. Why we are here, why God created us here, is actually to be Khalifatullah. Khalifa is a process. Istikhlaf is a process. That's why our vision as Muslims is the vision of istikhlaf, of khilafah. That's why we are created. And there are many verses about it. The idea of ubudiyya or worship, it's our objective. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْإِنسَ وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We have been created to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the framework of istikhlaf, as Khalifatullah. We don't just worship because we want to worship like any other people. No, we worship as Khalifa. In the framework of istikhlaf, ibadah becomes not only a spiritual action, but ibadah becomes all what you do in life. Your ilm, your knowledge, your economy, your health, your life, everything that you do is part and parcel of ibadah. And that ibadah, that action of ibadah, in the framework of istikhlaf, Khalifatullah, becomes you are obliged to do i'mar, the process of i'mar. I'mar, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, هُوَ أَنْشَأَكُم مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ وَاسْتَعْمَرَكُم فِيهَا, means you become i'mar. I'mar, the other word, is development, is sustainable development. You do i'mar. That's why for us to achieve our goals as Khalifatullah, we need ibadah, we need i'mar, or what Ibn Khaldun calls human association, or al-umran al-bashari, or al-umran al-insani, the humanistic i'mar or development. So here we are talking about the process. Then what is the outcome of our i'mar when we populate, when we build civilization, when we build culture, when we progress? The outcome will be what? We achieve that umran, which will allow us to become imam. What is an imam? A referral model. Because our ummah is in the Quran, khayru ummah. You are the best ummah evolved to humanity. The best in what? In your manhaj, in your process, in your umran, in your work, in whatever thing that you do, you are the best. And from being the best and the ummah wasat, the moderate ummah, we move to al-falah. We achieve our ultimate goal as Muslims in this dunya and akhirah. So brothers and sisters, the maqasid of the Quran, I want you as postgraduate students, as scholars, to see the dynamics between the maqasid al-Quran and the maqasid of Sharia, so that you understand the theory and the practice and the depth of the Islamic model of sustainable development. So, because of time, I will just move quickly. One of the big maqasid of the Quran is to do this, to build hayatun tayyibah, good life. Why we are here is to build hayatun tayyibah, a good life. What does mean good life? Because good life will necessitate a good model of economic development, a good model of environment management, a good model of leadership, of governance, of all this. You cannot achieve hayatun tayyibah, which the Quran speaks of, without having actually an in-depth understanding of what is it. The Quran also, among the objectives of the Quran, is preservation and taskhir of nature, of the resources of Allah, of the sunan of Allah, of what Allah has. That's why protection and preservation of nature and environment in Quran is not an action, is not a policy, it's ibadah. It's part and parcel of your job as Khalifatullah to preserve and protect the nature. Another objective of the Quran is to restore, to establish ummah, to guide people on earth, and so on and so forth. I just move forward, then I can. Okay, I come to the maqasid, objectives of Sharia. I want our brothers and sisters, when they think about maqasid Sharia in depth, you need to look at both the maqasid Sharia and the maqasid of the mukallaf, the maqasid of the Khalifatullah, because yeah, Sharia has maqasid. Sharia sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect life, to protect religion, to protect intellect, to protect wealth, to protect this. So you as Khalifatullah, what is your maqasid? What is your object? That's why in usulul fiqh and in fiqh, people, they study maqasidul mukallaf. Imam Shatibi, in his al-muwafaqat, Shatibi, in his al-muwafaqat fi usul al-sharia, he says that the main objective of the Khalifatullah, or you and me, you know what is it? Is to free yourself from your own desires and grips and hawa, to be a servant of God with your own choice, as you are a creature of Allah without your own choice. So it's not only to study maqasid Sharia, but also how to do that, how to commit, how to apply Islam, how to do ibadah, how to become Abdullah in all areas, so that we can understand the job of Khalifatullah. Let me move forward, no need for this one. Brothers and sisters, just briefly, from an Islamic perspective, we see humanity has moved now from the classical Western model of sustainability, where we talk about economic man, materialistic equity and equality, nature exploitation model, environment corruption oriented, worldly equilibrium, individual society dynamics. We move to sustainable development, where we are living now, where we talk about sustainability man, equity, equality, justice, rationalization and optimization of natural resources, respect of natural habitat, achieve high economic growth. That's great. Social empowerment, use of... Now, in Islamic sustainability, we are one notch up. That's why when our rector speaks about Maqasid Shari'ah as the framework, as the guiding, means actually we have the mirror, we have the mizan, we have the model that can help us to sustain. We are talking about vicegerent man, not economic man. We are talking about ethical, spiritual equality and equity. We are talking about nature taskhir, the concept of taskhir, not fighting with nature, with not exploiting, building economies and philosophies of economy on gain, on material. Environment friendly, dunyawi, ukhrawi model, and so on and so forth. I move forward. So brothers and sisters, we need, I show you one example of one of our great alim. His name is Imam al-Mawardi. Many economists, many of our scholars know him. Al-Mawardi, long time ago in his book, Adab al-Dunya wa Deen, was talking about a model of development in Islamic society, long time ago. So he put in his model, you need to have guiding religion. That's what we are talking about, Maqasid Shari'ah to guide. Then strong leadership and governance. Then he was talking about comprehensive justice. Then he was talking about security and stability in society to be able to develop. Then he was talking about economic growth or ma'ash. Then he was talking about protection of the rights and needs of the future generation. You know, people, what is sustainable development is to develop in such a way to use the resources, but in your mind, you protect the generation. This idea was in the mind of Al-Mawardi centuries ago. So brothers and sisters, we move forward. Now, there is also, I brought here from the Quran, the model of Yusuf alayhi salam. You know, Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was talking about or solving the problem at that time, also in his model, you see sustainability. He was talking about future planning. He was talking about growth. He was talking about leadership, accountability, and so on and so forth. So brothers and sisters, now, there is a recent contemporary scholar has developed this model for sustainability. He was talking about the need for society and relations. This is from an Islamic perspective. He says sustainable development from Islamic perspective needs this society and relations, needs ihsan, needs tasbih or worship, needs mizan, needs wisdom, needs ijtihad and creativity, needs to take into account maslaha, and needs justice. So brothers and sisters, all these ideas which I'm putting are not in any way contradicting what has been mentioned or discussed by Dr. Zainal, but I'm trying to show you the horizon within the Quranic model, how Quran and Maqasid Shari'ah can be a great alternative or guiding alternative to a new type of sustainability and sustainable development. Because what we have today is a model which is, I think the people in economy and the social and human science, they know that it's a product of a liberal, a product of Western type of model and thinking. Now, I'm proposing to you, this is a model, Maqasid sustainability model, which takes into account the Quranic perception of development, where we have 4 important things: vicegerent of Allah. And when we talk about vicegerent, he is the mukallaf, but we are talking about society, ummah, and the world. We are talking about environment, where we talk about nature, resources, sunan Allah, ayah of Allah. We talk about umran, insani, humanistic development, as our rector always talks about humanistic and making things more human. We have umran, insani, where we have growth, economy, civilization, culture. And then we have the concept of hayatun tayyiba. We need to establish hayatun tayyiba, not any development, not any life, It needs to be hayatun tayyibah. What is the concept of hayatun tayyibah? Shortly, I will explain to you. So within these four, the first one we are talking about worship and tazkiyah. And the second one we are talking about taskhir and preservation of the universe, of nature. And the third one here we are talking about growth and development. You cannot do sustainable development if your economy is weak, if your economy is lagging, if your economy is in trouble. So hayatun tayyibah, we are talking about quality life, well-being, and falah. Hayat that gives you falah, life that gives you falah, not any life. Now, here on the outside here, we need hikmah, we need ilm, we need tarbiyah. And that's exactly what the rector is saying. We need governance and management. In Arabic or in the Quranic concept, you need tadbir, al-mudabbir, tadbir. And then we need justice, of course. And here we need maqasid Shari'ah or public interest or maslaha as a guiding model, as was explained before. Now, brothers and sisters, this hayatun tayyibah, if you go to the Quran, if you read the Quran, Quran says that you cannot have this hayatun tayyibah if you don't have usratun tayyibah, a good family. The Quran uses usra or dhurriyatun tayyibah, dhurriya. All these concepts are from the Quran. I'm just translating. Dhurriyatun tayyibah, insanun tayyib, aklun tayyib. Your food should be tayyib. Your halalun tayyib. Anything you do should be halal, whether in money, in transaction, in politics, in whatever. Amwalun tayyibah, good money, tayyib money. Rizqun tayyib, livelihood, money. Knowledge, qawlun tayyib, kalimatun tayyibah, ilmun tayyib. Housing, the Quran uses masakinun tayyibah. Baladun tayyib, a city which is tayyib. You go to SDG, one of the SDG is to have good city. You have tayyib city. So then you have tayyib society. So brothers and sisters, I am just trying to show you how the Quran deeply articulates the idea of sustainable development. No one will come of our Muslim scholars in his state of mind to tell you that Quran or Rasulullah is not for eradicating poverty or stopping hunger or bringing health to people. All these 17 SDG, that's what the Quran exactly says. And more than this, the Quran says. So there is no question of those SDGs, but what is then the definitions? What say equality? How do we look at equity? How do we look at equality? We look at it from the perspective of the Quran. So the characteristics of Islamic sustainability need to be wise, humanistic, value-based, knowledge-based, balanced, futuristic, spiritual and moral, moderate, preemptive or istishraf or futuristic, growing, insightful, the concept of basira in Islam. Tubsirun. If you don't have ta'aqul, basira, tadabbur, if you are not awlul albab, you will destroy environment. You will destroy economy. That's why these are the concepts which the Quran use. And our postgraduate students, our scholars need to go and delve in depth into this. And now we create new ulum, new knowledge of sustainable development and sustainability from Islamic perspective. And then we implement and come up with products and we move forward. So brothers and sisters, we need to understand these things here. Now, as rightly and correctly articulated in the previous presentation, brothers and sisters, that we need to understand our Islamic worldview and how it is related to development and sustainable development. Usually, Islamic worldview speaks about man, universe, and life. Then that's why we need to understand that Any model of development, of sustainable development, must have these three together in your thinking, in your programs, in your plans. You cannot plan an economy without environment, without development, without economics, without the political system, the social system. Okay, I move forward here. So brothers and sisters, we need, when we talk about Islamic sustainability, to management of man, ummah, society, management of nature and the environment, management of life. To do this, we need all this: balanced worldview, balanced hayatun tayyiba model, balanced value system, balanced economic model, stable and secure societies, and so on and so forth. So we need also, when we move forward, this is just to show you here, all these are the Quranic terms regarding the model of development. Brothers and sisters, now we come to the issue, the problem that we are facing. We are always facing the problem between theory and practice. Now, as Brother Zainal was saying, sustainable development, the maqasid, it's all great, but now he put many questions how to implement now, how to articulate maqasid in sustainable development and to guide sustainable development. So we have just established that there is no issue between Islam and these sustainable development goals. And I tell you, they are the most close models of development in the Western context to the Islamic perspective, as they are talking about adl, about justice, about equality, about health, about all this. So very good to have something like this. Now, what Islam need to do, or Islamization in particular, as the mission and vision of our university, how to help articulate this and create the discourse that will help implement and look at sustainable development as a ground, as a platform where we show our Islamic creativity, maqasid creativity, to come up with solutions, to come up with products that will show how we remove poverty, how we remove hunger, how we protect the environment, how we solve the problems of health and economy, and so on and so forth. And I think we have already done when it comes to Islamic economics, Islamic banking. That's the model which we want to emulate in all other spheres of life. So brothers and sisters, we need to move from being consuming a lot of theory, and then we move to the trap of just theorizing, conceptualizing. Then we need to move. And this actually needs a mind shift, an institutional shift, and a culture shift. That's why I see that as far as our university is concerned, and what is happening in the last 2 years when the idea of sustainable development comes, actually it's like a process of doing a mind change, doing an institutional change where 5-6 years down the road, you come up with a model where Maqasid Shari'ah is already articulated in our context and our teaching, our learning, and also becomes the driving force behind sustainable development in society, taking into account, of course, our Quranic model and Quranic worldview. So brothers and sisters, moving from theory to practice, from Maqasid Shari'ah, how we articulate it, a lot of work has been done now, and there is a lot of work to be done, but we need, to me, one of the most important elements or factors to achieve this is we need to train those who will be to do this. Like when we're talking about Islamization, we need Islamizers, we need integrators. What are the scholars? What are the experts to do integration, to do Islamization, to do sustainable development from a maqasidic? That's why building this human capital in this context of maqasid and sustainable development is very urgent. And as the previous speaker said, this issue is of multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary nature. Therefore, we need to produce and nurture experts in all areas, in all fields, so that we have the expertise in implementation, in evaluation, in coming up with the things. So brothers and sisters, as Einstein long time ago said, stay away from negative people, they have a problem for every solution. So, and in your idea, of course, you will find many people, it doesn't matter the difference or criticism, or what is important is we focus and we have a roadmap, we have a plan, and we go and get this done. Unless implementation and impact is seen, theorization, even if it's great, it will remain always short. Now, we need to continue creating this tension in our university in particular. What does mean tension? Means creativity, means motivation, means knowing that there is an issue, we have to use maqasid to articulate sustainable development. We have to show that Islamization, integration, and maqasid model can provide knowledge, ideas, views in economy, in all disciplines, can come up with products. So this is our Islamization model in the university. I see that that's what we wanted to do through Islamization. I see that what we have here, we need aligned sustainable development program, which is taking place in the university now to bridge between Maqasid Shari'ah and what we want to do as Khalifatullah on earth. I think, I believe with this, we can move forward, and let's end with this, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results will not happen. We need to move to change, to create the experts, to nurture the people, to go into in-depth debates and move with the program. We do mistakes, but we move, and we, in the end, we will become a role model. We will become a model that can be emulated by others. With this one, I thank you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Berghout, for your wonderful presentation. It was really great and wonderful and beneficial for all of us. Particularly your address about Maqasid from the Quranic perspective and earlier Muslim scholar perspective. It was very interesting. Thank you again, Professor Dr. Abdulaziz Berghout. Now I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Abdurezak Abdulahi Hashi, Kulliyyah of Science from Kuantan. Please welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Burhan. Thank you very much for your kind welcoming remarks. And my colleagues and friends, speakers before me, Professor Abdelaziz, as well as Associate Professor Zainal Abidin, brothers and sisters, all of you, salamullahi alaikum wa rahmatuhu wa barakatuh, and good afternoon. We are already heading towards evening. Well, I think when Professor Aziz came in, he did mention that, you know, whatever that he want to say wouldn't be out of what Associate Professor Dr. Zainal Abidin mentioned. So he said that, what am I going to say after Associate Professor Zainal Abidin spoke about the issue? And now when you have Associate Professor Zainal Abidin already addressing the issue, and you have Professor Aziz addressing the issue, I was just asking myself what left for me, which I should address. Because when it comes to the institutional side of the topic, as well as the related elements that are meant to be addressed in this talk, I think they have sufficiently and diligently addressed. And I'm just trying to find out which area I should focus. The institutional side has been addressed. The need for the application of Maqasid Shari'ah has also been addressed. The aspect of, you know, IIUM, you know, philosophy and mission and vision being in line with, you know, the concept of SDG is also being addressed. So well, the question here is what then left? Sure, they have already addressed it, but I will say, as Aziz was mentioning, Prof. Aziz, that I'll try to find out an area that I can focus as well, which I think would be some kind of an additional point of what is being said before. With that introduction, I would like to share with you my slide and quickly go through with you with some slides for our discussion today. So, well, this is my topic, and I think you can see my screen already. Can you see there my screen? Hopefully you can see it.
Yeah, clear, Prof.
Great, okay. So here we have two actually interrelated dimensions of the topic. Number one, we are talking about the applications of Maqasid Shari'ah, and then we are talking about in the process of achieving the SDG goals or the SDG targets. So on one side, we have a process of achieving the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. And on the other side, we have Maqasid Shari'ah and its applications as well. So, well, of course, you know that as both professors mentioned, the concept of Maqasid Shari'ah is addressed actually in a different ways. And there are ongoing debates within the Islamic jurisprudence how to address and deal with the concept of Maqasid Shari'ah in terms of the conceptualization and in terms of its applications in the real life. And I think that debate, if we talk about it, it will take more time and it will be, very, detailed discussion. So, well, the concept of Masalik al-Illa, the concept of Maqasid al-Shari'ah, and which category of fiqh it goes, well, I think that one we don't have time now, but now we will focus a little bit on its applications and how that can be helping in order for us to achieve the set goals of sustainable development. Well, for the sake of quick sharing, let me go, because I think the topic is that I wanted to touch has been addressed by two professors. Let me go to some unconventional way of presenting and remind our postgraduate students, especially those who are not maybe familiar with Maqasid Shari'ah. Look, when we talk about Maqasid Shari'ah generally, we are talking about the ultimate aims of the Islamic teachings generally. And then, of course, when you talk about the ultimate aims of Maqasid Shari'ah, of Islamic law, you may ask, can I have some examples? Give me, please, because Maqasid Shari'ah is a concept that is always present in our life nowadays, whether in IIUM, in the leadership level, in the academic level, in the teaching level, it is there, and not only in our institution, but also throughout the Muslim world. It's a terminology, it's a concept that we hear even throughout the different channels of the media that we are using. So someone may say like, well, look, I want to know what is Maqasid Shari'ah is all about. And generally, of course, we talk about the definition, the conceptualization, and so forth. But just to make it straightforward, the ulama have classified Maqasid Shari'ah in certain levels. But commonly agreed classification is what I share with you here. Basically, the essential aims, the need-based aims, and the concessions in general, al-rukhas. And then ulama, when you ask them, they will just tell you Maqasid Shari'ah basically is, find out within these three, levels. And then one of them has some, details. So quickly, some examples, I may go to some unconventional ways. Hopefully, I think our postgraduate students, hopefully some of you have taken your hard copy mushaf and also maybe the software. Let us quickly go some examples before I go to the connection between Maqasid Shari'ah and SDG, elements. So let me go with this. The ulama talk about three levels: essentials, need-based, and complementary aims. So the essential, for example, preservation of life. And when we say preservation of life, of course, preservation of life includes almost like, the elements that are meant to save life in terms of security, in terms of guarding, in terms of policing, in terms of feeding, in terms of poverty eradication, in terms of healthy care, facilities development, in terms of, providing institutions that are meant to provide job security, for example, for the, different what do you call, citizens as well. So preservation of life is one of the aims of, you know, what do you call, the Quran, the Islamic law or the Sharia of Islam. So let me indicate, can our students refer to chapter 5, very quick, chapter 5, verse number 32, just for, you know, for your record, take home maybe message. Surah Al-Ma'idah, or Surah number 5 of the Quran, chapter 5, verse number 32. من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. Whoever takes a life is equivalent as if you have taken, you know, all lives, whether that one is directly taking life or indirectly taking life. If you save life, that is equivalent as if you have saved all lives. You know, concise, what do you call? Interpretation or translation. You compare that one to chapter 4, verse number 29. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا, for example. Surah number 4, that's Surah An-Nisa, verse number 29. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا. Another verse. Another ayah you may have also, you know, in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse number 195. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَحْسِنْ وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Do not destroy yourself by your hands. And now this is just a framework. I'm just giving you a few examples, few ayat from here and there. Of course, if we go and count the Quranic verses that are telling us to save life or not to take life or risk life, numberless. But these are just quick examples. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned here in this ayah, taking someone's life directly or indirectly or causing harm. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ is actually prohibited. Why? Because you are risking life or threatening life. Fine. Example. In this ayah, the Muslim ulama, the Muslim jurists come together and then they form one maqsad call. Actually, according to this ayah and other similar ayat in the Quran, the Sharia aims to save life. And saving life here includes what? As I said, development of health, economics, poverty eradication, job security, and it includes also, you know, other elements that are meant to protect the life. Number 2, then you have preservation of intellect. The mind, if you put in this way, as a postgraduate student, look, our mind is actually the machine that helps us to know who we are. You know, what makes us different from other creations of life is because of our intellect. And some ulama, they calculated, they say, man and women, minus mind equals what? We do not know what that makhluk equals. If we take out your mind, we don't know you equal who. Even lower than animals, right? And because the mind is important here for the human life, the Sharia aims to protect the mind. And in order to protect the mind, Sharia prohibited all forms of mind intoxication, including drinking wine, alcohol, for example, drug abuse, or maybe believing superstitious beliefs or khurafat also. And that is what we notice, you know, in chapter 5, surah number 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number apa? Verse number 90. Yes, Brother Burhan. Am I clear my voice? Is my voice clear, Brother Burhan? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Clear.
Or am I talking to the machine? Huh? Anyway.
So
look, on one side, the Sharia prohibits anything that risks or intoxicates or corrupts the mind. Therefore, all forms of intoxicant, whether it's spiritual intoxication like believing Hinduism and Khurafat and ghost, or intoxication in terms of cells and biology in terms of drinking wrong chemicals, for example, food and drinks, alcohol is haram. Why? Because they intoxicate the mind. Therefore, also another way of protecting the mind is promoting ilm and knowledge. because knowledge makes your mind upgraded, alert, awareness. And this is why ilm becomes wajib in the Islamic tradition as well. Preservation of religion. Of course, you go to chapter apa? Surah number 2, verse number 256. La ikraha fi din. Or you go to chapter 10, verse number 99. Afa anta tukrihu an-nasa hatta yakunu mu'minin. Or you go to Surah Hud, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كُلُّهُمْ جَمِيعًا. Or you go to verse number 29, chapter 18, وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا. So those ayat, again, there is a framework here. So when they compile these ayat, Muslim scholars said, the Sharia aims to protect the mind from all threats, regardless of where the threats are coming from, to protect the mind from, from all threats, to protect what? Religion from all threats as well. And then again, if you go to chapter 17, verse number 32, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also narrated on some other ayat, informed us, stated that defending your honor and dignity is very important to posterior generations, hifdhun nasl. And then you go to public and private property protection again. So here you go again to chapter 2, verse number 187. I'm just sharing with you the ayat for your record. Later on you can check, maybe because now we have a quick time to cover this topic. So the point that I want to mention here is when the ulama go through this ayat, then they found out actually there are some essential aims in the Sharia which the Sharia want to preserve. Hifdhul nafs, hifdhul deen, hifdhul aql, hifdhul mal, and hifd, al-hayat. Therefore, here is the conclusion. Because of preservation of private and public property, because of the private, preservation of honor, all forms of illegal sex are haramized, for example, prohibited. All forms of downgrading yourself, or dishonoring yourself is also prohibited. Freedom of religion is also assured in the Islamic, law. Public and private property are also protected. So here, as you can see here, there are 5 dimensions of life that are being protected and preserved. Why? Because these are the essential elements of life which the human being will be difficult to carry on without it. Then you have other aspects like need-based concessions or maybe complementary aims, at-tahsiniyat, which are meant actually to complement the essentials. So when you want to develop any developmental, concept, then you need to pay attention to. Are we developing projects, programs, educational systems, or economic systems that are there to, protect this? How our law is protecting these essential aims? How our, education is serving this? So our education, our economics, our social development programs should be actually aiming at this, right? Because this is the aims that are being, preserved in the, if we go to, to talk about the details, it will be long. So now we have the Maqasid Shari'ah quickly. Very quick. Somebody may ask certain preliminary thoughts. What does putting SDG and Maqasid Shari'ah together means? I left the word together there. What does these two, putting together these two means actually? The question here is, are we equalizing Maqasid Shari'ah, which is actually derived from invaluable source, to human efforts which are available? The Sharia ilahiyah, ma'asuma, and that is the source of Maqasid Shari'ah. But the human, efforts which are, available, SDG is just a human being coming together and then forming these targets. What do we mean by putting them together? Are we equalizing them? This is one of the issues. But the answer is, we are not equalizing. Basically, the Sharia itself aims at human actions and human decisions. So what we are doing here, when we are putting these two, we are actually bringing the Maqasid Shari'ah to guide us in achieving these targets which we all share. So what is the Maqasid Shari'ah is all about? I think I have discussed it and answered that question. Sharia aim is its realization. I have also did. Now we move to the second level of the presentation, which is actually, in order to understand the Maqasid Shari'ah application in achieving SDG, saya mahu faham, or I want to understand what SDG is all about. Well, very quick. Later on, you ask Sheikh Google. Sheikh Google has a lot of points or a lot of details to address and present to you, what SDG is all about, and when it was formed. So as you can see here, in September 2015, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that included 17 Sustainable Development Goals, building on the principle of leave no one behind. That is the slogan of the 17 Sustainable Goals of the United States, leave no one behind. But our economists, I think Dr. Zainal, Abidin, and others know that actually maybe 2/3 of the world resource, are being now utilized only in 2 continents, in US and Europe, where the majority of the people are living outside those 2 continents. So when we say that leave no one behind, is that just a slogan in the United States, or in the United Nations, or is it truly be applied, whereby no nation has been left behind? I think so many nations and so many communities have been left behind. A big number of world population today is living what? Under poverty line. So that word leave no one behind needs to be addressed, but at least now we are not focusing on that. So these are the 17 development goals mentioned in the United Nations resolution in 2015 and so on. And as you can see here, there are 17, some of them focusing here and there. But look, for the sake of study, for the sake of academic discussion, let us dissect, or let us divide the 17 into themes in order to understand quickly. Well, number 1, let me put it in this way. These 17 goals mentioned in the United Nations resolution can be divided or categorized into 4 major themes. Some of them were, addressing economic development. Other goals are addressing peace and justice. Others addressing the good quality of life. Others addressing the protection of the environment versus development and the balance there, the development versus that. Here we have 2 things, to protect the environment, the nature, and also we want to develop. So development is an aim, protection of the environment is another aim. So one time we use the nature to develop our life, to consume, the natural resources, but at the same time, we want to preserve it as well. So how to balance, that is the challenge. So the balance between development and protection of the environment is one of the huge subjects of debate in worldwide. It's not only here in IIUM. So these are the 4 major themes actually. So let us see. Theme number 1. Theme number 1, you can put together, you chamburize, mix together, combine. I think if you give to another lecturer, they may divide it into a different theme, but at least this is my, this is my effort to understand these 17 goals. So maybe you disagree with me or you agree with me. I just classified into these 4 dimensions. So goal number 1, goal number 2, goal number 8, goal number 12, if you look into it, they are talking about, these goals are addressing development, economic development, no poverty, zero hunger, decent work and economic growth, responsible consumption and production. Fine. And then the question here is, what Maqasid Shari'ah applications can help Maqasid Shari'ah application can help us to achieve these 4 goals, for example. Remember, just now we have seen the Maqasid Shari'ah in general. Now we have 4 goals, these 4 goals together, chamburized together. The theme is economic. Well, the Maqasid Shari'ah is actually offers a lot of teachings on that. And as rightly and beautifully explained by Prof. Aziz and Dr. Zainal, I think, yeah, they have already touched some of these concepts that I want to mention. So here you can see, Islam provides an integrated teaching that aims to eradicate poverty and prevent starvation. Like, for example, what? The concept of amal. Man amila salihan min dhakarin aw untha wa huwa mu'min. And as Prof. Aziz was mentioning that, because we want today to make the subject very closer to the Quran, I will ask you to go and see that ayah. Chapter 16, verse number 97. Man amila salihan min dhakarin aw untha wa huwa mu'minun فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً. So what we are aiming actually, sustainable development goal that we have in the Islamic law or the Islamic Sharia is actually to live honestly, decently, and happily, sa'id. So, and that one can be achieved with actually the word amal. اعملوا وقل اعملوا. Sometimes not only individually, man amila, but وقل اعملوا فسيرى الله. Go and work together, associations, institutions. فامشوا في مناكبها. Surah Al-Mulk, chapter 67, verse number 15. Check, please. هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها. Walking, earning. This is one way of eradicating poverty. تجارة. وابتغوا من فضل الله فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله. 62. But, chapter 62, verse number 10. And so forth. So in other words, if we want to eradicate poverty, handouts and charities may not be, a good way. We want to develop the individual, the skill-based economy, the skill-based development, the skill-based, income generation. So then we ask everyone to work, go and earn. That is one way of eradicating poverty, and that is what the Sharia is telling us. Go and work. Famshu. Wake up in the morning. After Fajr, don't go and sleep. Until where should we work? Until you die. You remember the prophetic hadith? The Prophet ﷺ said, walk even if the Yawm al-Qiyamah comes while you are planting a nurseling tree. إذا جاءت يوم القيامة وفي أحدكم فصيلة فليزرعها. This is the commitment to hard work. It's waiting. Al-mu'min yamut ala araq al-jabin. Where are all these teachings? Why we didn't institutionalize all these teachings and eradicate? Look, before we eradicate poverty, we need to eradicate the culture of being lazy. Easy, busy, make me lazy in the Muslim world. And that is what we need. Work, a community that is committed to work and earn diligently and dignifiedly. Number 2, another way of poverty eradication is infaq, by means of sadaqah, by means of zakat, or by means of through governmental, institutions like what? Baytul Mal. And therefore leave no one behind. If there are cases where we have, people who cannot work, then the issue of infaq is being promoted. وَالَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُم. So one way, this is what the Sharia is teaching us. Number 3, on the other side, look, working hard, earning dignifiedly, and then here you have what? The concept of infaq that is meant to fill the gap in case there are people who cannot work. And then here you have what? The concept of prohibition, you see, avoiding wasteful behavior or khusran. وَلَا تُخْسِرُ الْمِيزَانِ. Yep. You all right? Am I all right? Should I continue?
Yes.
So don't worry, I will be finishing soon. And then when it comes to prohibition of wasteful behavior, we have, a lot of teachings. In Islam, food waste is haram. In terms of what? Consumption. For example, you remember the prophetic hadith that says, give food to the hungry, for example. أَطْعِمُ al-ja'i' أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Or you have, for example, the other hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, guide us how to consume, the food of one, one is enough for 2, and the food of 2 is enough for 3, which means encouragement of leaving no one behind, practically in the real world. And then you remember the prophetic hadith in which he said, no man feels a container worse than his stomach. يعني وعاء أشد من بطنه, أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, if you correctly, remember later on. In other words, working hard, infaq, and prohibition of wasting food. These are the, the frameworks, or this is the framework of how to eradicate poverty and leave no one behind. Now you come to the 3 dimensions again, peace and justice. Of course, in Islam, when we talk about peace and justice, yeah, this is what we have, a number of teachings. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, اِعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, for example. You go to chapter 57, verse number 27, for example, Surah Al-Hadid. Or Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse number 8. Or Kunu Qawwamina bil Qist, chapter 4, verse number 185. Check all those ayat. And then again, when you talk about, you know, what do you call gender equality? Of course, for us, gender is not an issue. Why? Because in Islam, what matters is not your gender, not your race, not your ethnic, not your, what do you call? You know, how tall you are, how short you are, how white you are, how, you know, fair you are, your skin. What matters is not about your skin color. What matters is the content of your character. And that is what the Quran calls taqwa. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. So no one is better than others because of his or her gender or because of his or her race. So this is again a clear teaching. You go to chapter 49, Surah Al-Hujurat, verse number 13. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل and so forth. إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. So the issue of gender equality, justice for everyone, these are teachings that has already been, you know, addressed and presented in the Sharia, which the Sharia has already, you know, laid down and share, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveal it to us. Well, then the quality of life, quality of education, quality of health, quality of water and sanitation. Of course, we have also a lot of teachings as well. Let's go to that aspect. So here you have preservation of the mind. Fine. Al-ilmu, you know, this is one of the things that we need to pay attention to, you know, because when it comes to education in Islam and learning, actually, yeah, according to the United Nations, it's just a right, basic right. But in Islam, it's not a right, it's a wajib actually, it's an obligation. An obligation is something that you have no choice. Right, maybe you can say, I can let it go because it's my right to have nasi lima today or nasi ayam tomorrow or nasi, you know, let us say roti or something, you know, for my dinner. That's my right, right? So right is something that, yeah, you have it, but you may not, you know, the scholar, I mean, the students of law, maybe later on will have a different definition of what right is all about. Al-huquq. I'm not, you know, claiming that this is the definition, but you can check later on. But the point that I want to mention here is normally obligation is something that you must. So al-ilmu faridatun, talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli Muslim, as Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. That means enriching the mind, the process of updating and reforming the mind, knowledge, through means of what? Proper education, experience, learning, in all forms of learning and tarbiyah is or are necessary. Providing the right content of knowledge, yes, that is true. Making the education accessible to all in Islam is actually ala kulli Muslim. Then once you say that, finish, the chapter closed. It is not specific for certain group and not allowed for others. When we talk about good health, here is where again Islam provides a deep and, you know, the Sharia provides deep and, you know, what do you call, detailed account of how to achieve that as well. For example, healthy diet, halalan tayyiban, that is what we call healthy diet. Kulu, you know, min at-tayyibati ma razaqnakum. So in other words, first of all, we target for healthy diet in terms of eating a food that is with quality, in terms of nutrition, in terms of the content, in terms of safety, and so forth. Therefore, all non-halal food, probably you can say, lacks the necessary quality as well. Okay. Okay, I think my time is finishing, so I'm getting some messages, but although that message are directed to the participant, but I feel that, yeah, I have to quickly analyze it. And then again, when you talk about balanced meals in terms of quality and quantity as well, but in terms of timing, you remember prohibition of overeating. You know, nowadays we are suffering, some of us are suffering from obesity because we have overeaten. I don't know. Is it only the overeating leads to obesity or there are other causes or factors? I think the medical doctors are discussing. But basically Islam tells you, look, this is the manner. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. Eat and drink, but do not exceed the limits. Right? So this is again another very good teaching. Well-being again, you know, seeking medical treatment, sorry, C means what? تَدَاوُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ. This is a very concise statement which includes all sciences of healthcare, you know, practices today. Nursing, medicine, pharmacy. Tadawu ibadallah. So in order for us to do tadawu, then we need, of course, to master the knowledge of healthcare. So when Prophet ﷺ said tadawu ibadallah, that means what? Seeking treatment. How to do it? We have to learn, we have to study, we have to master, we have to go deep into it, and therefore we have to offer the treatment. Why? Because Rasulullah ﷺ commanded us, tadawu, seek medication, seek treatment. Two levels, in the level of understanding and in the level of providing it. Well-being again is achieved through what? How you can say? Well-being basically in Islam begins with the word Islam itself. Why? Because Islam itself means peace and, you know, free of faults. Faults of bigotry, faults of, you know, discrimination, faults of racism, faults of atheism. Atheism itself is a fault, it's a mistake. According to the Quran, he calls it a sickness, you know, somebody to get what? To be atheist or to disbelieve in the existence of God or deny to acknowledge him is fi qulubihim maradun, the Quran. So well-being begins in believing Islam itself. That is where you are spiritually, intellectually, physically being what? You know, calm, cool, provided, balanced. So Islam basically means harmony in that sense, you know, free of faults or peace, peace of mind, peace of intellect. There is no revulsion against the facts of Allah, for example, the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the principles of, you know, of what do you call justice and adala and so forth. Spiritual connectivity, salat, helping others and charity, zakat, self-discipline, control and of, you know, desires. This is again self-disciplining teachings. So that's why Islam means harmonizing and balancing. I guess, so these are again steps that you can go through, and from there you can achieve what you call the, you know, the elements. Well, these aims, 13, 14, 15, 9, and 7, and 11, actually you can go again to this ayat, which I have summarized it for you when it comes to protection of the environment and also avoiding to the nature. If you go to chapter 30, the European chapter, Surah Al-Rum, verse number 41, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the only value, you see here, the only value that human beings can add to the environment is not to corrupt it. Very interesting. Very interesting. In other words, the nature itself in itself is good. The nature itself is good. So what is the value that we can add? Do not corrupt it. That's it. So chapter 30, verse number 41, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Fasad has appeared in land and oceans in marine life. Why? Were they corrupted? No, no, no. Originally, these are good. The nature in itself is good. The only thing that the nature wants you to do is do not corrupt it. So when are we going to stop that? And then again, you compare chapter 30, verse number 41. You compare to chapter 7, verse number 56. وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا. Do not corrupt the land or the nature while it was created perfectly. God is good and he created everything good. So the only thing that you can do is do not turn it into corrupted, you know, by pollution, not controlling your, you know, desires, overconsumption, mismanaging the waste. So many forms of corrupting the nature, right? Then again, industry, innovation, and sustainable. This is again a very much, you know, related to what Prof Aziz was mentioning just now, as he quoted from, you know, Ibn Khaldun and others. This is based on the falsafa to ta'mir wa taskhir. Very easy. And hard work. Taghyir again, the dynamism, hard work and dynamism. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Chapter 13, verse number 7. Check, please. Or maybe chapter 11, verse number 11, sorry. Then avoiding hedonism and extraversion. Wala, you know, وَإِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ, in Surah Al-Isra, you remind me when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَ فِيهَا فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا فَحَقَّ عَلَيْهَا الْقَوْلُ. So taraf is something that destroys life. So avoiding taraf, وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا, avoid, So in other words, when we want to talk about industry, innovation, sustainable development, then we are in the philosophy of ta'mir and taskhir. These two words, in fact, when you read the Quranic ayat and what ulama said about it, you have huge, discussion is taking place. So finally, I would like to mention that based on this, ta'mir and taskhir, hard working and dynamism, at-taghyir, inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim, and the concept of unity, mobilizing the human resources that we have towards achieving the goals that we are aiming, and the concept of وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا, as mentioned in chapter 8, verse number 43, 48, if I'm not mistaken, please check, أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا. Then we are able to achieve what we call industry, innovation, sustainability, and cities and communities that are sustainable as well. Finally, this is independent to me. This is independent goal, although we divided into 4 major goals, 4 major themes, but theme number 17 is actually a bit independent, and it is in line with the Sharia, Maqasid as well. Why? Because if you look into it, partnership for all goals, for the goals, fine. So this is in line with the Islamic concept of ta'awanu ala al-birri wa taqwa, cooperating and helping together and moving everyone towards achieving common goals or common goods. Ta'awanu ala al-birr, to achieve a common good, what taqwa, wala ta'awanu ala al-ithm. So the concept of wal-mu'minuna wal-mu'minat ba'duhum awliya wa ba'd ya'muruna bil ma'ruf wa yanhawna 'anil munkar. Islam always want what? All resources to be utilized in order to achieve common good or common goals, and also prevent the harms or common threats that we all have. So let us put together. Finally, I want to end with what I think my professors also did, like Professor Aziz and also Dr. Zainal. One of the challenges that we have today is the Sharia has provided enough. This is the conclusion. And the Sharia can help us to achieve the goals that are mentioned in these 17 goals, and also beyond, more comprehensive. Probably this is very focusing on the material aspect, but more deeper and comprehensive goals. But the challenge that we have always is how to institutionalize these teachings of the Sharia into our practical life. And this is a question, it's not only for the professors of today, but also for the professors of tomorrow, that you and everyone, the students, the postgraduate student. So one of the things that I want you to have in mind and focus later on is, while the Sharia is providing so rich teachings on this topic, but the question here is, how can we institutionalize in a way that these teachings will become something that is applicable, can be practiced in the real world, institutionally, individually, governmental level, national level, and United Nations level. Thank you very much. And that is open for all of us. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Abdurezak, for your great presentation. Brothers and sisters, if you have any question, please write down in the chat box, or you can unmute your microphone and then you can ask to the respective speaker. Yes.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you very much. I believe, Brother Muhammad, I think you did very well to bring this topic in this time, and you managed also well. Maybe I have questions to the speakers, and also, actually, this is Dr. Ibrahim Shokar from Kuantan. I am from Kulliyyah of Science. In all cases, the speakers has well done. I have very few questions. Maybe one question for everyone. And I have comment also, if you tolerate me, about the concept of maqasid and how it is being applied. I believe that the speakers really, they address the topic in different way, which is could be completing each other. Prof. Zainal, I think he addressed the concept of or idea of the idea of sustainability, and he fixed it with some concept of sadaqah jariyah. I believe that is he shifted my attention, because we have some terms are very useful, but we didn't use them in a proper manner. So if possible, maybe Dr. Zainal, you can elaborate more about the sustainability and the concept of sadaqah jariyah, which is developed by the Muslim based on the hadith Nabi alayhi salatu. For the Prof. Aziz, I think he introduced very new idea, that is hayatan tayyibah. I really appreciate that approach, and we follow Malik bin Nabi. I think Malik bin Nabi never died. So Prof. Aziz is taking the place now. So I hope you elaborate this, because I really need that. I want to say maqasid should be based on conceptual analysis, not like what we do right now. We're jumping from here, bringing here, but Shatibi, he started from the conceptual analysis. He put very small question. We deal with the Sharia. So what is the final objective of this Sharia? He answered it based on Quran that final objective is to preserve the human interest. And then he go to the analysis. Okay. So I hope Prof. Aziz, because right now we are using the concept of tayyib is with halal only, but Quran used in so different contexts. At-tayyibatu lit-tayyibina wa tayyibuna lit-tayyibat. Prof. did mention this. This a wife could be tayyib, husband could be tayyib. Shajaratun tayyibah, asluha thabitun wa far'uha fis sama, and so on. So the concept of tayyib, I believe that it is should be studied like just what Dr. Razak do right now about the concept of what you call sustainability. I believe Dr. Hashi did well to attach. He created his own themes, and each theme is attached with a specific Quranic verses. I think that could be giving real ground how we are able to study this concept. Earlier, I think in 2015, I wrote an article. It is being published in 2015. I presented in a conference in 2014. It is about sustainability and Quran. And luckily, alhamdulillah, it is published as a proceeding and also published as, I just focusing on one term at that time, the concept of Khalid, Khalidina fiha abada. Quran uses for next life. So how we are able to make this life like that one, example of the next life, how we can do so. Okay, I put that one. I hope maybe if I can get the answer to this question. I'm sorry for Dr. Hashi. Maybe my question is last point, the 17 which you cannot find where you put.
Okay.
And you well done when you explain it as cooperative. Of course, cooperative is really correct. Actually, many resolutions of the United Nations want to bring the whole global community together to work for the good. But the challenge now, evil is too much. War is always there. And at the same time, Muslims never united. They read always وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, but next day they just individual working. Nobody work with anybody. So my question is how we are able to at least create some kind of unity among the Muslims based on that point, which actually United Nations put it to make a unity among the global community, not us Muslim only. Thank you very much. I have some ideas about the concept of the maqasid itself, but I worry maybe I take more time because really I believe that to study maqasid, we should start as Shatibi started. Because Shatibi, he divides the concept into objective of God and objective of the human being. And he got to the human being because he concept, this is a concept which we need to deal with it and bring it under the, what we call the power of God. So we will fulfill what God needs. And that is the concept of Amru bil Ma'ruf wa Nahyu anil Munkar. But of course, as we know, our ulama go so deep in the ahkam of Shari'ah and ilal al-ahkam and go on, and then they start to fight out of the context. So I believe that, if allow me, Dr. Burhan, I believe that it is time to shift to the what we call objective of God. How we fulfill objective of God, not objective of the human being anymore. How we fulfill, because God has objectives. So how we fulfill that? We must address this. If we really want to address the maqasid issue and apply it on the ground, we should go there. And we can find some ideas, I think, made by our late Professor Ismail Raji Farouqi. His book, Tawheed, contains very good data.
Excuse me, brother, can you...
yeah, that is my end. Thank you very much.
Briefly, your question, can you short?
My question I already mentioned. This is my comment. So I think the speakers, I put question.
Okay, thank you very much for your
question. Thank you, Brother Burhan. You tolerate me. I appreciate very much. Actually, you tolerate the speakers themselves. They talk freely. So I think that is new way to sustain, sustainability new way.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Yes, Prof. Aziz.
Okay, you want me to answer or you get other questions or what?
He asked, I think, one question from you about Hayatan Tayyiba and you make the relation with sustainable development.
Thank you very much. Okay. In fact, I think what is important to understand here, we are working at two levels, the institutional level and maybe the theoretical level where we can expand and develop ideas and views on maqasid or maqasid al-Quran, maqasid Shari'ah and sustainable development. That's one level. I think the scholars, the academicians, they can keep working on it. And there is the institutional level. That's what I think is more interesting, the university, because the university is trying to see how this sustainable development as becomes a global project, a global program of the whole countries of the world, how our university can become a model in bridging the gap between the maqasid and the sustainable development. What I said is it's a matter of creativity. It's a matter of understanding that sustainable development is not against maqasid or is not against the model of the Islamic teachings, but it's a matter of how our university, our scholars, our Islamizers, our integrators can move forward in creating products, in creating solutions, in solving problems. Now, the concept of Hayatun Tayyibah, this is a very interesting concept in the Quran, because the Quran, what is the aim of maqasid in the end? What is the aim of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the end? To show us the best way of achieving Hayatun Tayyibah, good life. What is interesting in the Quran that when he speaks about Tayyibah, not only halalun tayyib or food tayyib or rizqun tayyib, he talks about housing tayyib. He talks about city a city which is tayyib, baldatun tayyibah, baladun tayyib. What are the elements of baladun tayyib? So when we do our sustainable development, when we do our, as lecturers or student or staff, when we do our projects as postgraduate student in your thesis or in your community engagement product, you can talk about baladun tayyib or city tayyib from a Quranic perspective, or and find out the solutions how you do. So to me, in fact, this is part of another book which I'm working on, talking about worldview, hayatun tayyiba worldview. You need a worldview which is based on the concept of hayatun tayyiba. But as I said, when you talk about institutionalizing of a project or a vision or a mission, or you need to be more practical and more moving forward. But the debate will continue on hayatun tayyiba, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Aziz. Now I'm going to Professor Dr. Zainal Abidin. Brother asked me about the question about Sadaqah Jariyah and sustainable development, how we connect between them, please.
Okay, thank you. I sorry, Prof. Aziz, I missed yours, but I follow half from Abdurezak and I follow the question. I guess the person who asked already established a very clear connection here. Because to me, it's not about justifying the connection. What is more important is like what Prof. Aziz is saying is that how do we move forward? Yeah, I think because one of the reasons why Sadaqah is not being seen as dynamic as philanthropy kind of movement in developed countries is that we are not able to project the implication of Sadaqah in a more contemporary and communal and societal impact. In a way that we maybe give Sadaqah, we want to talk about building mosques. Yeah? We are not talking about Sadaqah for a bigger purpose, for a more like sustainability contextual implication. So my point here is that I think it's an overdue time that we put the concept of Sadaqah in a more progressive and dynamic way so that it can be a representation of how, not only talking about Maqasid Shari'ah, but how the Islamic framework of all these concepts is more than able to bridge, like what Prof. Aziz is saying, to bridge between the concept of sustainability and Maqasid Shari'ah. Yeah? And secondly, I think what is even more important is that how do we teach the concept of Sadaqah in our education system? I think one of the reasons why we don't have this mainstream perspective is that we don't teach the right dynamics of Sadaqah in communal functions. So we need to immediately correct not only concept of Sadaqah, but concept of Zakat, concept of Wakaf and etc. These are all very obviously strong linkages to sustainability, but the concern is that we somehow like to get bogged down and obsessed with the theoretical and conceptual side of the discussion, rather than making it a very progressive input from Islamic perspective, so that we can see the impact of all these mechanisms and models that we have in Islamic economics are more than able to provide for sustainable development. Thank you, bro. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for your question. Any other question, please? Prof. Abdurezak, you want to add anything?
I think because Dr. Ibrahim also directed a question to me, how to make some kind of like, unity among Muslims in relation to the goal number 17. I think that was a question raised by Dr. Ibrahim, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I think Dr. Ibrahim, this is very good question. And I think, it's actually, number one, it's very interesting to notice when you read the Quran from Fatiha to Rabbin Nas, whenever the ayah is addressing something related to social and economic development, you know, it's quite interesting. The siyah of the ayah, you know, the, what do you call, the text of the ayah or the mood of the ayah changes into a, what do you call, collective address. So for example, when it comes to work, most of the ayah talk about وَقُلِ اعْمَلُوا اعْمَلُوا اعْمَلُوا, go and work. فَامْشُوا, so there is a jama', it's not only one. فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, for safety, فَفِرُّوا وَسَارِعُوا. So when it comes to achieving, you know, common aims, وَتَعَاوَنُوا, you see, عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ, in terms of, you know, on all levels, in economics, in politics, in education, in so, you know, in other words, when you go through the Quranic ayat, what you notice is a quite interesting phenomenon there, which is actually when it comes to achieving common goals or achieving common good, or as Dr. you know, Prof. Aziz has noticed it, you know, the word tayyib is always, you know, you know, stated as a plural form. Everyone go together. So that in fact attracted my attention when I was reading the, what do you call, the United Nations number 17 goal of SDG. But here is where we have also, although the Quranic ayat are very clear on that aspect, and the Quran always tells us, do not, you know, go into, you know, disunity. Otherwise, when you are disunited, you cannot achieve anything. Why? Because وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ, your spirit goes away. But although that are the Quranic ayat, the principles, the ideals of the Quran, when it comes to the practical life in the Muslim Ummah, for example, the situation of the Muslim Ummah is quite interesting. Now we have the economic challenges, financial challenges, we have educational challenges, we have, in fact, to some extent, we have even the development of science is a challenge now, right? So this is the area, this is the time where the Muslim Ummah should come together and set up, for example, an institution, scientific institution, or research institution like NASA, for example. Why we don't see Muslims allocating some budget from the national budget, let us say 5% or 1% of the annual budget of the nation, Muslim Ummah, how many 50 plus countries, allocating for research and development, for example, R&D. And then we, for example, the institution like Organization of Islamic Countries can set up an institution that is meant only for this area of research, for example, communicable disease, non-communicable diseases, or maybe space like NASA, or maybe, you know, developing even technology. Why we don't have those institutions? You know, we don't have a collective effort, a Muslim Ummah coming together, forming that institution and providing funds, which is what? For good, you know, purpose. But I think when it comes to only security issues, we have conferences and meetings among Muslim Ummah, especially in the Middle East. I don't know, I don't have to comment on that. Why we only have ministries of security having conference or meeting or mu'tamar, spending a lot of money talking about security. Why? Because we fail in education and science. Because if we develop in education and science, the issue of security and crime wouldn't be there, because we fail to educate people. We fail to skill our generations. We fail. I don't want to disappoint you, by the way. Postgraduate student, alhamdulillah, they are area that we Muslim Ummah are doing great, but we have to talk in reality sometimes. We have to touch, you know, the painful area in order for us to, you know, look for treatment. So in my understanding, collectively, I think the Muslim Ummah is still yet to come together and form institutions that are dedicated for R&D, dedicated for economic development, dedicated for, you know, funding the, what do you call, economic projects that are meant to cover our needs, you know, for economic and you know, financial shortage. Although the Quranic ayat are using what? When it comes to social development, a great number of the Quranic ayat are telling us to come together and develop that. So I think probably our generation has failed to do that. but maybe the young generation can succeed in that. So I'm asking our postgraduate students, especially the young generation, there you have, inshallah, when you become tomorrow's leaders, chance for you to contribute, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdurezak, for your response. I hope Brother Ibrahim got the answers. Now we have some comments and some questions. Hassan Shoaib wrote, excellent presentation. May we be able to progress from the theory level to successful implementation. And then Jumail wrote, Assalamu alaikum from Abdulaziz. A question, please. How Maqasid Shari'ah may support application of individual freedom? It related to the current IT tech, such as social media that allow everyone to express their thinking without concentrate.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Brother Jumail, for this very important question. In fact, this is one of the applications of Maqasid Shari'ah in a practical situation. But what we are saying from a Quranic perspective or Sharia perspective, the Maqasid allows for the freedom of choice, from the freedom of expression, for the freedom of education, for the freedom of learning and thinking and doing this. All this is established in Sharia. Now, when it comes to implementation, you are talking about contexts, you are talking about governments, you are talking about societies and people. So there should be a kind of, and also we are talking about laws and policies that govern all this. Now, what had happened in the recent years is that the social media and all created another space where even governments cannot control. This new space is being abused by some people, by some groups for certain purpose, for certain ideologies, for certain. But what is important is that in Sharia, in fact, Tahir bin Ashur, one of the great scholars of Maqasid Sharia and the Mufassir of Tafsir al-Tahrir wa Tanwir, he added another 2 Maqasid Sharia to the 5 Maqasid which we all know. I'm talking here about this intellectual debate about the preservation of life or intellect. He added preservation of hurriya, preservation of freedom of people to think, to express, to do. And he added also the maqasid of adl. Al-adl. Adl is the asas of mulk, according to him. But now when we come to the question of our brother, this is a question which needs to be regulated. What Islam can do, what our education can do, what our university can do, is we can teach people, can explain to people and rationalize that your freedom is bound by your risala, your mission, your responsibility as Khalifatullah, is bound by the freedom of others, is bound by talking or saying something which doesn't harm others, which doesn't create fitna to others. Maqasid Sharia talks about ma'alatul af'al. If your action, if your act of freedom will cause harm to people, will cause harm to wealth of people, to the freedom of other people, so no need to talk about it. No need to do it because you are infringing, you are encroaching into the freedom of others. So what we are teaching in Maqasid Sharia, to be rahmatan lil alameen, to be balanced, to be good, to be educated, to be adil, to be just, we need to practice it when it comes to this freedom, this space of freedom which is given to us. So we need to teach people, whether mukallaf. Mukallaf means the Khalifatullah, whether he's a professor, a rector, a doctor, a student, all this. We need to abide by the teachings, the real teachings of wasatiyah, of moderation of Islam, that freedom is not forever, that it's not, and anything, Maqasid says, anything that its consequence will harm any of this 5 Maqasid, destroy the protection of religion or intellect or free, we need to stop it. In fact, Imam Shatibi is great at this. He put a very sophisticated system of how to implement this. So I think the idea of this need to be regulated by governments, by policies, but also need to be regulated by the awareness and knowledge and the ilm of the Khalifatullah. Need to be regulated by your correct understanding and implementation of Sharia. So as teachers teaching our student in the university, for example, we encourage them to do ijtihad. We encourage them to be creative and this, but we guide them. We say that Sharia, Maqasid Shari'ah, guides you within this framework of these 5 things. Anything that you do and breaches these 5 and leads to a bad consequence, a harm, because Sharia is for maslaha. One of the big principles of Sharia is dar'ul mafasidi wa jalbul masalihi. You stop the harm and you bring the benefit. You ask yourself whether your use of social media and use of your freedom, is it bringing stopping harm and bringing benefit to you, to your family, to your community, to your country, to others or not? So Sharia teaches the scale, teaches the indicators, teaches the way how you think maqasid. It's not just some words we say. We need to learn the culture of Maqasid Shari'ah. We need to learn the system of Maqasid Shari'ah. Then until it becomes part and parcel of our habit, our culture, our thinking. So I think that's my comment to our brother. His question is great. I saw also another question there from one of the sister Aisha talking about what is specifically the provisions of Maqasid or Quran, which talks about conservation, energy conservation and consumption. Yes, yes. You know, as I said in my presentation, and this concept need to be revisited by scholars, by researchers, by those who are implementing also sustainable development goals, which is the concept of taskhir, the concept of how to deal with the energy, to deal with the resources which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given to you ethically and morally, because destroying any of this nature, environment or natural things will destroy your economy, will destroy your implementation, will harm. Let's say when people go and destroy the habitat or burn the trees somewhere and create haze, and all this is very dangerous, and Islam prohibits this. And if you check our fiqh, you go down to our fiqh, you will find details of our fuqaha telling don't do this, don't harm this, don't stop this, the sun even to go. When you build the built environment, when you build your house, or you cannot stop sun from your neighbor. You cannot. Rasul says, as Brother Abdurezak mentioned, even Qiyamah is happening now, and you have in your hand a tree or a seed just planted. That's life. That's greenery. That's the concept of hayatun tayyiba in Islamic Quranic perspective. So there are many provisions in Maqasid in the Quran speaks about the protection of the universe, of nature, of people, of resources, and also fiqh punishes for this. It's not just talking about values, but we punish those who destroy the land. We punish those who burn the land. That's what fiqh says. That's what Sharia says. Anyone harms all these 5 objectives of Sharia, religion, life, and wealth. Under wealth, we include all this. The wealth of the Ummah in the new concepts is the tangible assets and the non-tangible assets. You know, that's why environment is a wealth of the Ummah. All this energy, all these resources are the wealth of the Ummah. As you know, I don't want to go into the environmental analysis of what is wealth, what is resources, what is renewable, what is not renewable. That's a different story. But sister, there are many provisions in the Quran and the Sunnah and in fiqh, particularly the fiqh of Ahnaf, Hanafiya. They expand this thinking of environment, of resources, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Abdulaziz, for your response. I think Brother Jumail and Aisha got the answers. I saw that there are some comments. Jibril Abu wrote, I am happy to be part of this great development. Also, there are some questions, I think. Muhammad Tahir Sabit wrote, would our professor comment on the concept of Imara of Al-Asfagani and Umran of Ibn Khaldun? Also, please, on the concept of Qasab by Imam Muhammad Ash-Shabani.
You want me to answer or our brothers can answer? No problem. I am ready at هذا مسألة.
Yeah.
I think Prof. Aziz can answer that.
Yeah, I just give a comment.
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Also mentioned, I think, yeah, the concept of Umran Bashari or human association of Ibn Khaldun is in line with the concept of istikhlaf, concept of khilafah, is in line with the teachings of Sharia and Islam. You know that Ibn Khaldun in his introduction to human association, he's the first, I can even say, world scholar to talk about Umran Bashari in a multidisciplinary approach, where he speaks about Umran from a religious perspective, from sociological perspective, from economic perspective, from fiqh perspective, from even he speaks about geography and environment and all this. You just go back to the Muqaddimah. It's a very beautiful piece of writing on human association. So Ibn Khaldun concept of Umran is very important. Why? Because it was based on Maqasid Shari'ah. It was based on the Quranic perspective of civilization and tamaddun and culture and values and virtues. It's for the first time you have a systematic thinking, a thinking system in the Muslim world where you have a scholar speaking about Umran look like he's living with us today here. That's why his Muqaddimah 1,000 or like 5, 6 centuries ahead of what's going on today. In his concept of Umran Bashari, which is sustainable development today, he speaks about all these concepts of protecting the environment, protecting people, the right of people to ta'lim, the right of people to work, to jobs. He call it sana'i', he call it malakat, competencies, education. I don't want to go into the details because this Ibn Khaldun is Bahr. Is a sea of ulum of sustainable development. That's why what we want to teach to our postgraduate students in the future, I think Dr. Zainal told me they are coming now out with a master degree in sustainability and sustainable development, and there is a part for Islamic perspective. We can give you a lot of ulum of this brother talk about architecture and imara. Muhammad al-Shaybani is a great alim. And Abu Abid, who talks about al-amwal, al-Mawardi, who talks about Shariah and all this. These are big people and big scholars, and thank you for bringing these books of Kasb. The idea of Kasb is economy, is economics from an Islamic and Maqasid perspective. I tell you, when we move, inshallah, in this implementation and becomes a culture, becomes in our programs of postgraduate, undergraduate, and you will see how Islam and Islamic history and Muslim scholars like Al-Ghazali, like Ibn Khaldun, like Ibn al-Khatib, like Al-Izz ibn Abd Salam, like Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, like Shatibi, like Al-Juwayni, like Al-Burhan, like all this, you will find what the ulum of sustainability are there because they base it on what we are talking, rahmatan, all these are there. But what is needed now in our context is to move with the new terms, the new terminologies, the new concepts, and see how we can go for implementation, and we can do it. Sharia, Maqasid Shari'ah is full of ilm and knowledge and guidance to us. It's just a matter of how we create the people, the human capital, the people who can bridge. That's why I told you in my presentation, we need experts in this multidisciplinary new field. Sustainable development is multidisciplinary. Maqasid Sharia also is multidisciplinary because it covers religion, wealth, life, intellect, education. All this are there.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Brother Burhan, if I may add one more point, I just want to add one more point with what Prof. Aziz mentioned, rightly and beautifully explained it already, especially with regard to the issue of energy conservation. The point that he mentioned is actually already explaining well. So I thought I may complement with what he said by, you know, referring our sister or the person who asked, actually Aisha, I think Sister Aisha asked, you know, the concept of conservation and consumption, whether it is energy or food or housing or, you know, it doesn't matter, or time consumption also. In Islam, the key word, as mentioned by Prof. Aziz, is actually the idea of, you know, israf and taraf. Both taraf and israf, which basically means the bottom line of these two words is, you know, the behavior of exceeding the limit is prohibited in Islam. And in fact, the Quran mentions that the word taraf and israf are the one who destroys economy and the whole umran, the whole sa'i of development, social development, the diseases of social development is actually israf together with taraf, which are basically exceeding the limits of normality. Or the Quran sometimes expresses it as a khusran, wasteful behavior towards natural resources or natural balance of life. Or taraf in the sense of exceeding the limit of usage or consumption. So let us go to, I'll give you 3 ayat and I want you to reflect on that. Let us go to Surah Al-Rahman. Surah Al-Rahman, quickly, chapter, Surah Al-Rahman is 54, I think 54 or 55. Can you check please? Surah number, verse number 9. وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانِ. You know, if you read the whole surah, of course, that is where you will see the whole, you know, the picture. You can visualize the whole, you know, message. وَالسَّمَاءَ وَضَعَهَا رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ. As I was just mentioning, our behavior towards consumption of nature, including energy, actually can be derived from here, whereby the Quran prohibits the, the behavior of wasteful consumption. When you use your office, fine, the light can be on, but when you leave the office, off it. Energy consumption, because we want to save the energy. So that, otherwise you will what? It leads, your behavior leads to corrupt the balance of, unnecessary troubles. And then you look into, that is the natural consumption, right? You go to Surah chapter 17, verse, Surah Al-Isra, verse number 16, I guess, 16 or 15. Let us check together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that when a given society's life, when a civilization is about to collapse, you know what happens? Those who are wasteful, or taraf, those who are extravagant, extra, usage of the natural resources in terms of money, in terms of wealthy, in terms of economics, in terms of consumption of the energy, will lead the community, and then that community's life will be destroyed. You see? وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نُهْلِكَ قَرْيَةً أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَفِيهَا فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا فَحَقَّ عَلَيْهَا الْقَوْلُ فَدَمَّرْنَاهَا تَدْمِيرًا. It's a whole, maybe this ayah somebody can write a whole thesis, master thesis or PhD thesis. Because the element of taraf destroys the way of life of society. Then you compare again that ayah, you jump, we jalan-jalan cari knowledge dalam Quran, those who speak PN, we travel in the Quran, all zero, and then we learn lessons. You compare those two ayat to Surah 25, Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 25, Surah Al-Furqan is chapter 25, verse number 67. Yes, this is an economic issue, spending, including energy conservation, right? وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا وَلَمْ يَقْتُرُوا. The characteristics of Ibadur Rahman, and what Prof. Aziz today, nicely and beautifully explained it, Hayatan Tayyiba. The Hayatan Tayyiba people are the people who never misuse or spend wrongly their energy and wealthy. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا, when they spend in terms of family spending, housing, in terms of economic management, or in terms of energy conservation, they do not exceed the limit. They don't overspend, and they are not stingy until things get stuck, unutilized. So negligence of the natural resources, unutilizing it is not acceptable. Abusing it and overutilizing it is not also acceptable. So in هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم. Therefore, where we need the equilibrium, the most excellent way of life. So the concept of إذا أنفقوا لم يسرفوا ولم يقتروا وكان بين ذلك قواما, in the middle, the best way. Why? Because if we exceed the limit, then إلا أمرنا مترفيها ففسقوا فيها فحق عليها القول. Why? Because ولا تخسروا الميزان. We abuse the nature, and therefore the mother nature revenge. When we abuse the nature abuses us back. And that is what's happening today in the climate change. And that is why we need Muslims or non-Muslims to come together and say no to pollutions and climate change and do something about it. What can we do? The only thing we can add to the nature is do not abuse it. Do not corrupt it. That's all. Thank you. I think I talk a lot.
Thank you, Professor Abdurezak, for your good explanation. Okay. Professor Zainal, do you want to add anything? So I think Prof. Zainal is not.
Is there?
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm still.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank very much, because I think this is very productive and constructive discussions that need to be continued. At the center, and any suggestions how we can take up this both conceptually and also more important, putting it at practical level. So I really thank you so much for the invitation. I enjoyed the discussion, though. I'm very sorry that I missed your part, Prof, and Dr. Abdurezak. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Prof. Zainal. We have some comments. Hanan Hussain wrote, MashaAllah, excellent presentation and discussion. Jazakallah for the organizers. So I think we end of the session. Thank you all participants for joining today's forum on application of Maqasid Shari'ah in achieving sustainable development goals. And also thank you very much all speakers, from Dr. Abdelaziz Berghout and Prof. Zainal, for Abdurezak. It was really very wonderful and effective workshop about Maqasid Shari'ah from historical background, from Muslim and non-Muslim scholars, scientists, United Nations goals, and Sharia scholar objective, and Quranic perspective. It was really effective workshop. Inshallah, we will continue again like this workshop. So with this end our session today. Thank you again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you, brother. Thank you, everybody.
Shukran. Thank you for your invitation.
Thank you, Prof. Aziz. Thank you, all the speakers, for Sudi to be our speaker. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum.